Well, hello and welcome to Office Hours. This is a show dedicated to answering your questions about media and virtual productions. Here, you get to ask the questions. And so you're the producers. You control the content of the show. Feel free to ask your question to our talented list of producers. You can ask a question by going to our website at officehours.global. There, use the Join Us link at the top of the page and join our community, which is really the best part of Office Hours. You'll find that we have lots of opportunities for education, as well as special labs throughout the week. So check out our schedule about some of our poignant discussions that we have. David, what do the producers have for us?
Good morning, Josh, and everyone. It's been a while since I've been here. Our first question, though, comes from Mark Giuliani in Washington, D.C., and here on the panel. And he asked, could someone please explain the difference between lift and gain on the ATEM Software Control from Blackmagic Design?
All right. So lift and gain. Do we have any ATEM experts on the panel today? I know it means something different in cosmetology.
It's not a technical term. It's sort of a Blackmagic term. That's all I know because I don't use it.
So I should probably raise my hand. Sorry, guys. My understanding, I think the lift and gain is with regards to camera settings. Isn't that where that lives? Yeah. So I think lift, gamma, and gain are really highs, mediums, and lows in the rest of the world. And I think, if memory serves, lifts is the lows and gains is the highs, highlights and lowlights. So you can make adjustments to, if you have a Blackmagic camera connected to your ATEM, you can use the lift and gain to adjust your highlights and lowlights. I think that's right.
Thank you, Blue. And did I see someone raise their hand? They may have dropped it.
Courtney was in for a second, and Alex is here.
Very good. Did you have a thought, Courtney, or did you
can you guys hear me?
We can.
I had a whole
I'll defer to Alex because he probably has the answer.
Series of technical issues this morning. I'm really glad that I wasn't the host. So,
Hey, Alex, I got a question for you. Do you know what the difference between lift and gain in the ATEM software is?
Yeah. So the lift is your black levels and the gain is your white levels. And so if you actually open it on a scope, let me see, I can never do this effectively. But if you open it on a scope, what'll happen is you'll see when you pull the gain, you'll see your black levels stay the same. Your white levels will move up and it'll stretch everything in between. When you grab lift, your white levels will stay the same. The black levels will pull up and down, and it'll squish everything in between it. So it's scaling from. So I think of lift as scaling from the white, and gain is scaling from the black, and gamma is the middle point. And you can just move that middle point up and down. So you're moving it was exactly what was described a little earlier as I was crashing and trying to figure this all out. And then I think I crashed the show. Anyway, so, but it is, but basically your scale, lift will scale from the white, gain will scale from the black. So if you want to tweak highlights, you grab on gain, you move it up and down. Like my gain, it might not be set this way right now because my switcher just crashed, but typically my gain is set at like 0.79. And the reason I do that is so you don't see as many highlights on my skin. But I move my gamma up, and then my black levels are just so I can see the blacks. If the blacks go below 0, it crushes your blacks. And you move them up a little bit and you'll get detail back, but it might look a little washed out. So, and then the gamma is that center point of the brightness. So let me hold on.
So I'm adjusting lift right now.
Yeah. And that's moving your black levels up and down. Right. And then if you grab onto your gain, pull it way down, gain, see how it doesn't just cap off the whites, it's scaling the whole image from the black point. So as you move gain down, it's going to move it towards the black point, but it stretches the whole image up and down from the black point, while as lift will do it from the white point. You're lifting it up towards the white point. And then your gamma is in the middle.
Okay.
It's like the midpoint, moving it up and down.
that help you out, Mark?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Let's go to our next question, David.
Alrighty, our next question is from me, and I'm looking for this. Years ago, it was a rack-mounted universal DC power supply, and it had modules based on the requirements of the device you want. Used Phoenix connectors in the modules, and then whatever millimeter size barrel thing there. I think it was Tripplite, but I can't recall, and I'm wondering if anybody has ever seen anything like it. Sorry, I paraphrased that whole question.
You seem to have some inside note on that, Courtney.
I haven't seen that. What came to mind when you mentioned that is the PSC cart power unit, which is this in it, but it's designed for 12-volt power. So it's got the 4-pin XLR outs, but it's got managed output, has battery backup, or it can be connected to battery backup. So it can distribute power on a sound card. But for variable voltage for 5 volts and 7.5 volts and 12 volts intermixed, that's a bit of a problem these days. I use these power banks for 5-volt stuff so that you basically have a bunch of 5-volt USB-As, and 2 of those outlets on this power bank are 2 amp, and the rest of them are 1 amp power. So that if you just have the adapter cords that go from USB-A to whatever barrel type connector or whatever type of connector your DC voltage needs, you can use those. But finding one that's smart enough, the problem is a lot of these power supplies that are designed for modern day equipment are smart. They talk back and forth over USB if they're hooking up over USB-C or USB-A. So they determine charging values and voltages and so on over USB-C. And USB-C can deliver multiple voltages. So finding something that's versatile enough to handle plugging into something that requires a USB-C power connection is kind of problematic these days. It's best to use the wall wart that came with it, because your chances of frying things are pretty high if you plug it into the wrong voltage.
Very good. Alex.
Middle Atlantic, I haven't used this, but the Middle Atlantic has a multi-mount universal power DC power distribution. And based on the color, it will...
that might be the one I was thinking of.
Yeah. So that's the one. I've seen it. I've never used it. I've seen it in builds. And so they have a whole bunch of different colors, and some of them are 5 volt, some of them are 12 volt, depending on what you want. And that might be what you're looking for.
Okay, cool. Thanks for drawing the memory.
All right, David, another satisfied customer. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. And he's asking, Safari and Zoom use the same shortcut Shift-cmd-A on the Mac. Zoom uses it for turning on and off the mic. So a system-wide Key F19 triggering Shift-cmd-A does conflict with Safari. Can I somehow disable the shortcut in Safari?
And I will say, Stefan, there are some things that you can look at in your shortcut settings. This is a Windows machine, so not the same. I know the particular thing about the video and the microphone is that they use Alt on the PC, and I think it's the command on the Zoom side. Though infuriatingly, it's the same button. Alt is the same button that hides all of your display options. And so when you use that, it has a conflict. Some of them have a global shortcut option on the right that you can change. But if it's hard-coded, if those particular functions are hard-coded, there's really not much you can do as far as controlling them direct from Zoom. Oh, Alex, you have a thought?
I don't use the shortcut for Zoom, and I also don't do production in Safari. So I think that those are the solutions that I found to make that actually work. So I think that it's the conflict. I mean, my short thing would be just use Chrome, and then that would be my fastest solution. And I don't think that there's a way to, I don't think that there is a way to do that, but I think that, of course, using something like Zoom OSC or other things like that, if you have those things around, you can reprogram how that's going to happen.
Go ahead, Blue.
I was just playing around with it, given the fact that I use Safari, sadly. And as long as you're not in Safari, it won't conflict. So you can make the Shift-cmd-A for Zoom a global command. And as long as you're not hanging out in Safari on a production machine, which that you probably shouldn't be doing anyway, it's not going to conflict. So you can be in another app on the desktop in Finder, and you press Shift-cmd-A, and it'll control Zoom and ignore Safari. So that may help.
Yeah, and it's been alluded to as well. There are other ways to mute yourself other than just using the Zoom native controls. So that might be desirable if you have a hardware way to do that as well. Let's go to our next question, David.
Alrighty, our next question comes from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, and here on the panel. And he's asking, has anyone had success using LinkedIn Live? I attempted to use it last week, but was unsuccessful.
Okay, and it was somewhat exclusive. I don't know if that's opened up anymore. Alex,
how would it fail when you said you weren't successful? What wasn't successful?
The interface did not. I don't know if I had to go actually fully live or not, but there was no option to control the camera or microphone, and because I did not know what were you trying
to go live from?
I was trying to go live from my computer.
Right, but what service were you using to go live? You're trying to go live directly from LinkedIn, or were you trying to go through a service? Yes,
I was trying to go directly from LinkedIn. I found out recently that I probably need to use StreamYard or... Restream. Restream or StreamYard, I think, are the two easiest ones to get into LinkedIn. I think that OBS may be supporting it now. I'm not certain, but you need to. I think I wouldn't with any platform. I wouldn't use their built-in live tools. That's just a surefire way for it to be messy. I know that they tried to do it to make it easier, but it does not make it easier. I would highly recommend, going through a system that you can control, because you don't really want to go. The problem with a lot of the built-in ones is they have no way for you to have something up there when you go live. I'm a big fan of having a slide or something going there before I'm there, so you don't see me going, let me figure out how to get this started. So I generally want some kind of production pipeline to be in front of me so that I can have something playing or doing, happening. And then because what I want to do is I want to start the stream, and then I want to have instantaneous control inside of my production pipeline, whether that's your ATEM or whether, so you could take your ATEM if you, or OBS or Mimo Live or whatever you want to use there. You want to have that be the thing that you cut from something to you, not the go live spin up. That's been kind of the bane of many of our existences for the last decade, is not knowing exactly when you're live. And so that you have that. And I don't think that LinkedIn lets you clip the head yet. So LinkedIn Live, like once you go live, I don't think you can go in there and clip the front, which means you'll have this kind of the first frames that anybody sees of you will be like trying to figure out whether, and that was the way we had it for first for Hangouts, then for YouTube Live, then for Facebook. It's always this like trying to figure out if you're live or looking around, trying to figure it out. You just got to get past that. You got to have control that you're going to cut away. Like one thing that I think Loria does really well is that she does like kind of behind the scenes where you see her whole rig kind of set up while she's working, and she goes live and you get to see that, and you just get to see you're there, but she's kind of working away. And when she's ready, she turns it on, and it gives you something moving. It gives you, something to watch as opposed to nothing. And then she comes in live. And I think that's a really effective way to do it too. But I use slides because. Yeah, that because of all of those reasons, that's why I canceled it. But interesting thing happened. I had put in all the information for the broadcast, and I was just basically publicizing Jeffrey Powers being on Conversation with Tony Mobley. Mm-hmm. And I put in all the information about him being on and the time and all of that. And when I canceled it, it's still publicized on LinkedIn that I had attempted to broadcast, and there were people who actually came in and liked it, right, even though there was no broadcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to admit that for me, I haven't done LinkedIn because I have a pretty large community on LinkedIn, and they are all my peers. So, and experimenting, it's not quite the same for me as Twitter and YouTube and everything else. Twitter, and I think that I have a different relationship with the folks that follow me on Twitter or YouTube, and so I can just be experimenting, like, oh, we'll do the best we can. But in LinkedIn, I'm less experimental, and so it's kept me. I think I did one live. Well, I was on the very early part of LinkedIn Live and did one, and then the mechanism was so uncomfortable that I was like, oh, I'll wait until they mature, and then I just haven't come back. But we are going to put this show on relatively soon.
And Tony, are you a Mimo Live user?
I am a Mimo Live user.
Okay. I don't know if that might help you with some of your broadcasts. David?
Yeah.
You have a thought?
I'm sorry. The attempt was just to publicize the show that particular day, and I thought that I could do that without using StreamYard or Restream, but I know better now. So,
okay, David.
Yeah, I've been a Restream user for a while on Sundays, and one of my things with that platform is you can either go live and it automatically pushes to the destinations you want, or you can set up a scheduled event. The scheduled event will pre-publish the upcoming event as a placeholder on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, whatever it may be. The caveat with that is as soon as you start the encoder, it pushes those things live. So you don't have the luxury of having any sort of pre-flight, make sure everything is working. At work, my workflow would be you could kick off the encoders, and it wasn't until you push go live that the go live would happen. So I brought it up with Restream, and they were like, "Meh, that's not how we work."
Yeah, I mean, and then they can't figure out why people aren't using it. So I think that the main thing is that you. That I still feel like you want to have some content up there that entertains people, or at least keeps them hanging there for a little while before you start live. You want to hand the encode off to your video production, not when you try to go live right into it, you're doing what we tend to call a hard start. And the problem is it throws everybody off. Everybody's kind of kerfuffled and trying to figure everything out and get everything working. For instance, we start this show 5 minutes ahead of time with a countdown clock. And then when we're good and ready and the countdown clock is lining up, we jump into the show in a nice organized fashion. I highly recommend something like that. Remember that 99% of your viewers will be coming later. And what we do is we just clip that part off.
That's why I'm just wondering with the LinkedIn Live, if it's that same mechanism where you're setting up the event and it's not until the stream hits it that it goes live. And maybe that's what Tony was saying with the event still being there, but not the stream.
You just want to have something other than you or your host on screen when it goes live. That's my recommendation. Even a still said we're about to start.
Or the typical we're having technical difficulties with the guy digging into the camera image.
The worst part, yeah, exactly. The worst part with Facebook for a long time was that you would lose 80% of your viewers in the first minute. So if you went live, everyone was told it was happening, but you would literally lose 80% in the first minute. So for us, we had to figure out how to spool that up as fast as we could. And so we would go out and we'd all have this intro video that would be interesting to tell you where we were. And then we'd immediately, but within 15 seconds. So everything would have to be, okay, everybody's ready. Okay, we're going now. Walk out. Boom, we're here. And we have it all happen, and it had to be like tick, 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 really, really fast. It was super stressful, especially because we were doing it with very high level folks. so it was very hard because you had to time everything really tightly, and so I hated that part of it. Because it would also, the other problem is that it's still, the countdown clock is still stuck there. Back then, you couldn't clip the videos.
And Mitchell, you have something to add?
How about an intro every time, just to set it up? Live from planet Earth, it's Office Hours with your host, Alex Lindsay. What do you think, Alex?
I don't think so.
I could whisper it.
No. Hey, if you will whisper it, I'll do it. Like if you want, if I can get Mitchell to whisper, I'm in.
Welcome. All right, just checking.
See, Mitchell, it paid off. You held out. There you go. Now the payoff is here. Fantastic. Well, Tony, hope that helps you. Let's go to our next question.
Righty. Our next question comes from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. And he asks, has anyone worked with Double Robotics or similar teleconferencing robots? We've got one at work and it's been challenging. Tips, tricks, recommendations for rolling one out.
I have not looked at it, but I've not used it, but I was looking at it on its website. It looks pretty interesting. I'd be interested to know. Alex.
Yeah, we got to play with one a couple of years ago. They've been out for a little while, and we were like, this is all hype. Just, like we were just like, this is, it just got stuck on things. It would come in, and when it came in, it was weird. I was just kind of like, why don't we just get on a video call? Like we don't have to, I think that this is a solution looking for a problem. I mean, it's this idea, and people think of it as an idea that, they can walk around and they can talk to people, but it's super, we found it to be relatively annoying. And so we tested it in our office for a while, and we were just like, we're never going to actually use this, and it's just easier to pick up and do a FaceTime or to pick up and drop something down. Now, I admit we are really good at what we do. So it might be, that we had better tools than it did, but it was, we got it because we thought it was going to be amazing. But we didn't, it just was quirky and buggy and we didn't like it.
But Alex, there's robots.
We couldn't even imagine that we would use it if it worked perfectly. It didn't work perfectly when we got it, but we couldn't even imagine that this was something that would be part of our regular workflow after we had it. So anyway, that's what happened to us.
All right, we've had some more panelists weigh in on this now. David?
Yeah, I was in the same boat as Alex. We looked at it years back when they first hit the market. It was kind of a closed system, so it couldn't work with the corporate infrastructure we've had. They've made some improvements, and what Josh was showing before, you can actually schedule a test drive where you'll remote into one of their systems and putter around their campus. Probably a little tough in a place like my office where it's a big mess, but in a classroom, it's probably worked pretty well, I think.
Very good. And Courtney?
Yeah, I think before COVID, it made more sense. But now, since COVID and everybody's gotten used to using Zoom and sitting at their desk and having a camera and a microphone hooked up, that it's, as Alex said, it's easier just to remote into the desk rather than to drive a robot into somebody's office. And the other problem is with these self-balancing Segway type transports, if it gets onto a floor, a linoleum floor that somebody spilled coffee or something on or water on, and one wheel turns where the other one doesn't, it can faceplant, which is not healthy for the top-end display if it suddenly flips over. Maybe it's got little outriggers to prevent it from just going completely over. But like the Segway, if one wheel starts slipping or moving in an unanticipated fashion, the computer that controls the balance just freaks out and tries to go forward, backward, and then that can cause the thing just to suddenly faceplant.
That's a word to the wise. Mitchell?
When I go shopping at the Super G grocery store and I'm in there squeezing the tomatoes and that silly robot sneaks up behind me and starts making funny noises, you want to turn around and it's just... You're not used to seeing a face at face level smiling at you or talking to you or doing anything. I don't think it's a normal way that you want to approach anybody.
And John?
Jason put in the chat that this is because they want to be able to allow PEDS patients who are in the hospital to navigate through an aquarium and attend an aquarium event. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thanks for that. David?
All right, and my last... aside, a couple days ago, I was at one of those robot sushi restaurants, and they did have these robots that delivered beverages, and they played a tune. It would come down the aisle, people would get out of the way, and your beverages would arrive at the table. So that was the future, and it was pretty cool.
Good, Alex.
I think if I was going to attend, the thing, I guess what I would say is that we're thinking a lot. So we may be using more live views in the future and everything else. We're thinking a lot about taking people on tours, aquarium tours. We're actually looking at Monterey. So aquarium tours, nature tours, farmers markets. Like we're thinking about all kinds of things we can take people to. what we're looking at is how do we scale so that a whole lot of people can experience it together, hundreds or thousands of people experience it together, and then have a person operating the camera and make it worth it to have a person there as opposed to a machine that will be kind of bumped around and maybe or maybe not work. It's a fun technology, but I really think that you're better off creating a group experience where you can put the resources into it. I think that the individual resource problem is the part that gets that gets in the way. Like, we want to have anybody able to do it whenever they want, but it won't be as good as if you think that they can do it anytime they want. But if you had 200 people there and an operated camera, they'll actually get more out of it. As a group than they would by themselves, because you could have a host there, and you can have them answering questions, and you can have them all, people being part of a bigger conversation. They'll actually have a better experience, in my opinion. But again, we're probably going to try this in the not too distant future in Monterey.
And Courtney, you have the last word.
Yeah, now if they said they're going to be touring an aquarium, here's a tip: turn off the screen, because the fish don't need to see you, and you're just going to see yourself reflected in the glass if you're trying to look through the glass. If you roll the thing up to it, you're going to be seeing yourself just reflected in it, an image of yourself. So blank the screen if you can, or turn it off.
I hope that's helpful for you, Jason. It might be that you're just running up against the limitations of the platform. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty, our next question comes from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. And he says, let's say you have thousands of photos. What's the best way to organize them using Google Photos, Apple Photos, and locally, for example, the Synology Photos?
Courtney?
I would just settle one of those. I use Google Photos because it seems to be the most comprehensive. It's completely cross-platform. So if you're using Apple Photos or something, if that may not be accessible to parts of your family or anyone who you want to send links to, Google works universally. It has one of the best search engines out there. It does facial recognition and situational recognition and sign recognition to organize your photos by, it can recognize places from just the environment. So I think it's one of the best search engines out there. That's what I use.
John?
So for the most part, I've kind of given up on organizing my photos, at least the ones that I take with my iPhone. I rely on Google image search in the Google Photos app to find stuff. But I also sometimes use Apple Photos whenever I know the location where I took a picture, and I'll use the map view that they generate from there using the metadata they capture from the GPS settings in the camera. For my more DSLR type work, I rely on tagging and put tags in. And again, I don't organize per se, but I do tag so that I can search on them. And that helps me a lot whenever I'm looking for things that I've captured with my DSLR.
And Alex?
I currently have about 60,000 photos on Apple Photos and about 5,800 videos. I used to use Aperture, but haven't ever found another thing after that I liked enough to move all the photos and try to figure it all out. And so as an Apple user, and I just stick with Apple Photos and let it kind of do its thing. As far as family members, I just send photos to my mom. My mom's the only one. She will not give up her Android phone. So that's. But outside of that, everybody's on Apple phone.
There's no shortage of services that want you to send and manage all of your photos.
I print the photos and just send them to her. Here.
Nice. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty, our next question comes in from Hasma Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa. Alex, if you procured another Mac Mini for office hours backend, would you get 256 or 512 gig drive? And what about RAM?
I would get the drives on there are pretty fast. So I would actually I used to do like minimum drive, but I got an 8 gig with 256 and I ran into the ceiling on that 256 really fast. I would say I would try to get a terabyte on there and a 16 gig of RAM. I have a 16 gig and the thing with the terabyte, it just depends on what you want to do. But like, for instance, I wanted to put Logic on it. There's like 200 gigs of sound samples on Logic, and well, at least the library that I have. So it was like a lot of the drive space was just Logic. And so Same thing if I download a bunch of templates for Motion. If I download a bunch of before I know it, I've got 512 just data to support Apple apps. So I think that 1 terabyte is probably where I'd look. 16 gigs. I have hit the 8 gig limit. So at first I was like, you can do anything with 8 gigs, and now you can't. so I've hit the 16 gig limit or 8 gig limit, and in some cases the 16 gig limit. So I would say 1 terabyte and 16 gigs of RAM is probably what I would get for something I'm actually going to use. Now I buy a bunch of 8 gig 256s. I have bought a bunch of those. I think the 090 has probably 10 or 11 of them, and I have nearly the same number. I get them because I know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do Zoom ISO. and I know that Zoom ISO has no problem pushing 4 out of a Mac Mini with 8 gigs. So the M1 Mac Mini with 8 gigs will push 4 1080p streams out without, I think it's at like 20% utilization or 30% utilization. It's like at nothing. So for what I buy them for, they do great. But I don't, that's the only time I buy them. If they're for a very specific mission that is not difficult, I can use them that way.
See, Hasmuk's framed the question that, using it for the OH backend, but it sounds like he may be interested in using them for his own terms, at which case, imagining the storage, if you already know what your use case is, is a little. But
the big thing is you don't want to give up you don't have that many ports on the back, so you don't want to give them up to a drive if you need it later. That's the only thing I would say. But if you're just doing OH backend like what we do, the M1s are stunningly fast. I was just in a conversation with someone yesterday about it, and they have an incredible amount of power. And what we're seeing is that developers keep on getting more out of them, over and over and over again because they're getting more power out of these, each one of these, just by programming more to the metal, more to the APIs that are provided. So we haven't even seen what the computers can do yet.
Yeah, I will say that I'm usually pretty hesitant to adopt a first generation product. However, the M1s, I have to say, I acquired one to just be able to, handle clients that I knew would be coming into meetings that had the new platform. But it's been remarkably resilient. Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, we had a long conversation on After Hours yesterday with Santa Bart, and he's contemplating going to the Apple side of things. He's got PC, and he wanted to pick the right flavor in order to him to do his Santa Claus, a lot of green screen, a lot of special effects, a lot of 3D backgrounds. And he was really vacillating between a Mac Studio or an M1 or 2 M1s for the same price of the Mac Studio. And we're kind of like pushing him towards the M1. He doesn't realize how wonderfully quick and good that M1 silicone is that's in the Mac units. And even with the potential of an M2 Mac coming out, the M1 still holds its own against just about anything out there. And it's kind of where we were recommending where he goes.
Mark?
So Apple usually has an event coming up in the fall, the first week of September. Would it be a good idea to wait just a bit more and probably see a price reduction on the M1? Not that whatever they announce might be better, but you might get more for your money.
You probably have to wait until November. That's my guess. October, November. It won't be in September. I don't think they won't usually crowd the phone with something else.
Yeah, if you can use it now, get it now. It doesn't make any difference what's coming. And there is no length of opportunities to use your M1 if it gets retired, in a year's time. There's plenty of things you can do with it.
This right here that you're seeing me draw on, it's a 2012 Mac Mini. It's like they never go away. You just find something else for them to do.
Yeah, and it's not unheard of for upgrades to be missing features the previous products had. Just saying. Blue?
So from a production side of things, we had a bunch of Mac Minis that when we plugged them into R8, like a Constellation through HDMI to SDI adapters, we tend to have a lot of flickering with them, which I don't get. Well, when we're plugging in 2 monitors to them. When if it's only 1 monitor out, I don't have any issues. But the moment we plug in a second monitor or a second...
I think that's an EDID issue. It's constantly renegotiating. So if you get a thing that's in between that will lock the EDID, it should stop doing that.
Oh, good. More adapters.
It's negotiating. It's constantly negotiating. That's the problem. Because here's the problem is that this is a problem in general with the switchers, is that the switchers negotiate. They say, hey, I can do anything. And the computer does, I can do anything. The two of them keep on trying to do anything. And so they keep on getting out of sync. And so if you lock the computer, you want the computer to say, this is what I'm going to do. And then the switcher will adjust to it. But that's the problem, is the switcher has got a scaler in it. And so does the computer. And the two scalers are talking to each other. And that results in flickering. Or black, one of the
It's
other.
interesting that the same thing doesn't happen on our Intel Macs or our Intel Mac Minis. Like it's unique to the M1s.
Well, try locking the ADID and see if it works. I use multiple outputs from my Mac Minis all the time. I don't have that problem.
So do better, Blue Melnick. Gotcha.
No, I'm just saying. But check out the EDIDs and see if you just get two of them. They're not very expensive. Lock it. Because it'll look at it, and then you connect it to a monitor that's 1080p or whatever you want it to be. Lock it, and then see when you pass through that whether it still flickers. If it still flickers, come back.
You're talking about those tiny little HDMI adapters that are just like male, female.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah.
Feels like I'm about to order a bunch of them. Thank you.
Don't buy a bunch. Just buy two. I don't know if it'll work.
And then I'll probably
don't know
40.
if it'll work yet.
Yeah.
But if it stops flickering, then buy 40. But only buy two first. Okay.
So did I miss it, Blue? Did
we expect a report next week. So
were those two identical monitors, Blue, that you said?
They're both going into. They have a path, right? So they're actually going. In the end result is yes, but they're going into a 40x40 that's then going into a constellation. So both sides are doing the same thing.
Oh, and they're going into a router first.
Mm-hmm.
So. And are they mirrored or are they the same? Or are they two different ones? The other thing to try there is to try plugging them straight into the constellation and see if they flicker and not into the 40x40. Try that first. Like I would just do that first and see if that works.
Got it.
And then go to the EDID to the constellation directly. Then put the video hub in. Yeah.
It's funny. The hits just keep on coming because I'm forgetting that they're also plugged into a Multiview 16 before they get to the router. So.
Yeah, so definitely plug them directly into the constellation. Just to, it's the typical remove all the variables, then add the variables back until something breaks.
Yeah.
I'd be super fascinated to talk to you next Saturday.
Could be the old woman that swallowed a horse by the time you're done. David, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a quick one. Geffen has the HDMI Detective Plus, which sits inline in the HDMI signal, and you can kind of tie it into a display and it'll record. It doesn't defeat HDCP, but it kind of spoofs the EDID of whatever your downstream monitor is.
What's the general cost of that, David?
About $200, I think.
$150.
Okay. Hey, I've been okay.
Nice. Hesmuk, there you go. Lots to consider. Let's go to our next question.
Our next question comes in from Fred Eric Eckert from Bad Herrenbald, Germany. And he says, what Mac app do you use for DWG and DFX files? Part 1, apps for view only. Part 2, apps for converting to PDF. And Part 3, apps for working natively within the files.
Alex?
I have not worked natively within the files for a long time. Mark is probably going to be able to answer that better. For viewing it, I have used DWG Viewer is the one that I've used in the past, but I haven't worked with the files directly for a while.
Go ahead, Mark.
So AutoCAD has released, or Autodesk has released an AutoCAD package for the Mac, and it runs on the M1. So you could use that for your DWG files and your DXF files. I don't know about 3D.
And I do think I believe that SolidWorks will open DWG and DXF files. So that's another thing to look at.
Okay. Let's go to our next question.
All right. Our next question comes from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. As today is LBJ Day in Chad's Daily Observations. And Courtney, is there an LBJ story you can tell us that we haven't heard yet? And for those who are not from the States, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that former president guy. Yeah, I used to work at KTBC Radio AM, which is now KLBJ, cleverly enough, because it was owned by Lyndon Johnson and the Johnson family. And let's see, here's a story that I don't know if I've told it here before. I was on the air on KLBJ or KTBC AM on a Saturday morning, and I was chatting up a young lady on the telephone between records. It's a top 40 radio station, but on Saturday and Sunday there's news blocks that we do. Ah, yes, there he is now, chiming in. But I was suddenly interrupted in my call, not on the air, but I was off the air. Record was playing, and the switchboard which routes the calls to the control room. I hear the person I was talking to suddenly went away, and I hear "Stand by for the president," and I went, yeah, the switchboard guy is pulling my leg, again. And I hear a click, click, and then I hear this voice on the other end says, "Excuse me, are you in the control room?" And I went, "Yes." "There's a hum on my radio," and it was Lyndon, and he was in the car at the ranch, complaining about a hum in his radio. And so, first I thought it was somebody pulling my leg, and then I realized no, it was him. And so I assured him, "Well, I'll have the engineers check out, make sure I don't hear any hums here in the studio, and all this. I'll have the engineers check it out." And so I eventually appeased him and got off the thing. And I called the engineer upstairs in the television portion. And he came down and started moving some patches around the patch paneling. And he mutters to me, he says, "Well, I don't know what he's complaining about. He's got a direct line to the ranch directly from the control room." And then I suddenly went white and realized all the bad stuff I'd been saying about Lyndon Johnson when I thought the microphone was off. We weren't on the air. Over the years. But so that was a little scary. So there's one for you. Another time is Jack Wallace, who was a cantankerous old disc jockey, got the call from requesting a song to be played from Lyndon. And he thought it was somebody pulling his leg, because we'd get those kind of calls all the time. He said, yeah, right. I ain't playing, Melancholy Baby for you, or whatever the song was. And Johnson happened to be upstairs in the penthouse, because he had an apartment on the top floor of the television station. And he came down and told Jack directly what he wanted him to play. So there's those kind of stories.
Next time on Tales of Caution from Courtney Gooden. Go ahead, Alex.
It's funny because the thing that was funny about him talking about the buzz is when I was a DJ, when I was a morning show host, I George Bush Sr. was the president, and we used to do things where we'd have George Bush call for tech support, and ask us things and everything else. But we would do it. What I would do to do this thing, I would call. And I would do the kind of the Dana Carvey version of George Bush, dealing with the volume, I can't get it up, and I would do this, but it sounds horrible now, but we called through a phone. So it was like a phone call, and we'd record it on carts. We'd record all what he was going to say, and then we'd have a script that we would do against it. So this would be something we do at 3 o'clock in the morning, because we think it all up. And we do it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then at 6, we get this phone call. Oh, this isn't. So it's funny that it actually happened, because we thought it was the funniest thing. It would be funny if the president was calling and asking us to play things and asking us to do things. I never thought that a president would actually do that, but pretty hilarious.
Truth is stranger than fiction, and often much funnier.
I do have an LBJ story, though, not directly, but we did an event out of his library. There's a library in Texas, and we were doing it for YouTube, and the funny thing is that to get fiber out of the campus, through the campus that's next to the library, it was a week and a half of work, and it was, we had to talk to everyone, we had to get all these extra boxes, we had to do all these other things, and my client was very uncertain that it was worth the money to do this, and was really frustrated with me that I was
steadfast that we have 5 presidents or 4 presidents or something like that speaking, we were going to have fiber as a backup anyway. So I just kept on hammering through it, and we got through it. It was an incredible amount of work. I mean, the most work I've ever had to get fiber somewhere, and it was just the backup line, to make sure that we had something if something went down. Anyway, the internet went down. Like, except for my fiber. So literally all the networks were on YouTube. Like all the networks were using YouTube as their feed because it was the only feed out of the event. For like 2 hours. And my client never asked me again about when I said I think we need fiber. No one ever argued with me again. And we did it again. We had the same problem at the DNC in 2016. We paid $20,000 for a Vivix line, and everyone was really upset about that, except for the fact that the rain came down so hard that all the satellite feeds, you could tell who had fiber because there was like 3 networks that had fiber and everybody else had no signal of the convention. So anyway.
And the media tie-in is anecdotes that help you negotiate with your client are useful tools.
Exactly.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just curious with LBJ and Lady Bird Johnson, was that coincidence that they had the same thing, or are they saving on monograms?
Well, Lady Bird was his pet name for her. It wasn't her real name.
Copy.
Saving on monograms. It's great.
Right. And
Saturday morning for you.
We don't mind waxing on and taking some time. We do have plenty of time as we have a double portion of your questions. So please feel free to take advantage of the
if you wonder
vast
why we're
wealth
taking
of
so
knowledge and experience that we have here on the panel.
If you wonder why we're having so much fun, we're taking so much time. Not a lot of questions sitting there. So we're like, we got time.
Yes. But we're here. We're here to answer some of your questions. So please put some in if you like. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty. Well, our next question comes from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. And he's asking, are there any iPhone Shoot app webcam users? And please share the pros and cons.
Alex, I know you use that app.
I use the app, which keeps on adding tons of features. And I don't know how to use the web part. So I kind of open it. What happens is I keep on opening it up and going, I'm going to figure this out. And then I go, I don't understand. We're going to have Michael have him on. We should do an update and have, we should do a Shoot second hour. So Josh will write that down, but and kind of walk through it because it's a great app and it keeps on adding all these extra features. And I went to go, I'm going to figure this out. And I opened up the Shoot app, but I don't know how to tie it to a web page. And I probably should. And I'm sure that I'm sure it's an RTFM problem, or RTM. Sorry, it's a clean show. RTM problem, but I just keep on opening up, going, I'll figure this out, as guys do, and haven't figured it out yet. And
Tony, did you want to ask something more?
I just wanted to really, I was looking at trying to implement it in my my setup.
Do you know how to do it?
Do I? No.
When you open the Shoot app.
Yeah. Now my the phone that I'm using for my webcam is in the back of my teleprompter. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
No, I don't know, but I'm sure that Michael Forrest is like just going like this. He's like watching in the UK, just going, oh my gosh. So Michael, we'll get you on, and if you're listening, and we'll have you show us all the new features. So.
That's right. We've created a whole. I think you mentioned too that there's a specific driver that Shoot uses that gives you certain capabilities.
I mean, the big thing that I like about Shoot is being able to telestrate. So you can look at your camera. You can have your camera hooked up, and then you can draw with your finger. Like, I'm looking at this, and it's got lots of other features in it. That's the one that I've used the most on Shoot. And I don't think I have my phone thing set up right now, so it'd be hard for me to show. But it's a great app. It's not a replacement for Filmic. People always go, well, can I just use Shoot instead of Filmic? It's not a replacement. Filmic gives you a bunch of other tools that are really more Filmic than what Shoot does. Shoot is very high utility. Like, it just has a lot of things that are useful in it. If you're going to use your camera as a phone for something, the telestration, the Fenwick frame, he literally has the Fenwick frame added into the app. And this remote control looks really cool, except I know that it can do it. I just don't know how it does it. So
Yeah, I've not dabbled into that. And what's the minimum requirement to run the Shoot app? Is it Mac only or the iPhone app?
It's an iPhone. I don't think it works on Android. I think it's just iPhone 8 or something like that. It goes back.
And does it need to go to Mac or is it cross-platform?
I think the remote control is a web-based thing. That's the thing, but I just don't know how to tie them together.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. So yeah, we'll look into that. I've given my secretary
Alex Knight
the hour.
Alex Knight says you just tap the remote icon that looks like a computer screen. It takes you to a Square TV website where you register your Apple ID. Then you get the web interface controls. I believe Michael uses WebSockets. I was thinking about that. I think the easiest thing to do would be able to open a web page. This is for Michael. Open a web page and have it pop up a QR code, and then point Shoot at the QR code and have the two of them just sync. Like that would be a super fast way to sync it. I'm sure that I'm missing something. It's probably a lot harder than it sounds, but I think a QR code that pops up on a web page that ties the phone. If you just point the phone at it, it'll do the negotiation without any logins or anything else might be useful.
I'm sure just by us stirring on it, there's been a lot more attention onto the app. So the next time we encounter this, which may be a second hour, we'll definitely have more answers than questions. Let's go to our next question.
All righty. Our next question comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware, and here on the panel. And he's wondering, are there any panelists or backend support staff that have not yet been hired by Zoom?
Show of hands. John?
Well, I, for one, have not, but that might just be because I'm only on Saturdays and Zoom only watches on weekdays.
Copy. Alex?
Not yet. So I think that one of the things that's happening is that we are on the front, the cutting edge of what's happening with Zoom. We're pushing Zoom further than almost anyone else. This is definitely going to be this is a really easy place to find people who, if you need someone who really knows the nth degree of Zoom, we're a pretty good group. And obviously it's helpful to be part of the teams and part of the panel and part of all those other things because we're digging in, we're doing stuff that no one else has done before. So of course it'll be a pretty rich environment, a nutrient-rich environment for them to dig from, most likely.
Sure. And John, have you been hired by Zoom?
I have not been hired by Zoom, and I'm not looking for employment with Zoom. So
there you go.
There you go.
Mitchell?
I think in about 6 months, it's just going to be me and Alex, just the two of us, the only ones left. Because nobody wants to hire me. They don't need comedy at Zoom. And Alex is very busy doing his thing. So it'll just be the two of us, Alex.
I don't know. I think Zoom needs a little comedic injection in their corporate.
I think we need to have you open up all their meetings. I think just like we did before. Coming up next, we've got
and now from Zoom headquarters.
Isn't one of their taglines about making people happy?
See?
Oh, they're happy and funny are two different things entirely.
You're just not trying hard enough.
I think you should be the in-house announcer for all their meetings.
I'd love to do it. It would be great. Whisper. Oh, no, I can't do that.
Fantastic. Let's go to our next question.
All righty. Our next question comes from Greg Greckmeyer in Topping, Virginia. And he suggestions if he wants to build a trailer for doing on-site interviews in the trailer, must have features. He first thought of a cargo trailer, but now he's thinking more of an old Airstream.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. So when you said I want to build a trailer for doing on-site, I was trying to think of like a trailer, like a movie trailer, like I do interviews. And so I read the first half having one picture and then the second half having another picture of what you had to do. So the best ones that we found to do interviews is Winnebagos with toy haulers on the back. So these Winnebagos have a toy hauler. Toy hauler is like you can put a car in it or a bike or whatever, four-wheeler, but it's big open space in the back. And it's where the bedroom would normally be in the Winnebago. What's nice about that is that in the front part of the Winnebago, you have controls and you can rack things into it and you have all the things you need. You close the door and you've got a little studio in there that you can do interviews and so on and so forth. And so that has been a couple people have done that with their Winnebagos. and that has been a pretty, of course you can buy a regular one and just tear out the bedroom and do that. The one thing you have to think about is sound. So you are somewhere mobile.
you'd be surprised at how often every car that goes by becomes a problem, and everything that, so while you can be mobile, you have to really consider what it takes to make that happen. And so we've seen a couple other solutions. Some people are using box trucks that are expando. So it's a box truck that opens up. So it gives you a little bit more space, but then it also has, a lot of them are, I wouldn't call them floated, but semi-floated, where they have an air gap all the way around them. That kind of locks into place. It's not the same as floating a room, but it definitely cuts the exterior audio down a lot to make that actually happen. So those are other things that you might want to think about related to those. But your biggest problem is going to be the Airstreams. I think will not be your best bet because they're going to be really cramped, in space. You want something. Your preference is something that will expand. Something that will go. Your problem really is that 8-foot limit. Width. If you can, you want to open that up so that you have a little bit more room to work. Otherwise, you're going to work on the length side and if you go with a trailer, get it longer than you think you need it. So like if you're going to get it, you'll think, I need a 10-foot box truck. If you're going to use a box truck, we didn't end up building it. We had to design an anechoic chamber inside of a box truck. Anyway, so but 22-foot is what you want because you need control area. You need people to walk through it, and then you can shoot long ways down that, and it'll work okay. But again, the problem with 8 feet is it doesn't give you very much width to put something that's going to get rid of the sound outside. And the sound outside becomes just something that just kind of ruins everything.
Mitchell?
I agree with Alex on the Winnebagos back in the 70s. When I was on the radio, we did that to a lot of radio stations. In fact, there was a couple OB manufacturers that would do the conversions for us, and they would put a big decal on the Winnebago and everything else. And the fact that it had the expandable center section really made it comfortable if you got to sit down and interview. But I've done that a bunch of interviews. The last time I did it, I think I interviewed America, the group. And they were very impressed. They were more impressed with the van than they were, or the Winnebago than they were with anything else that I was talking about.
Courtney.
Yeah, another thing to consider is power, because if you're going to be sitting there all day, most Winnebagos or motorhomes or trailers will have a generator to supply power, and that's going to make noise. You might look into solar power. There are now a number of solar charging with lithium-ion batteries power supply systems that you can get for mobile homes or trailers. Put some solar panels on the roof and charge up a large battery and let that be your power supply. Because remember, you're sitting in a little box that the sun is beating down on. It's going to get nice and toasty in there in the summer. Depending upon where you are. Well, you're in Virginia. So you might want to consider air conditioning because that's going to be another noise source for you.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and the batteries have gotten so good right now. I mean, you can get batteries that will definitely run the tech part of your system. The air conditioning I don't know about, but the tech part of your system will run it for hours. And we've definitely seen people like, basically you take a break and you switch it back, and you can do solar that will slow down the amount of the drain, and then you can use a generator to top it off, but it'll run for hours on battery to make that actually work. So that works pretty well. The one thing I will say is also just budget for branding. Man, if you have something that looks cool on the outside and is doing something cool, make sure that your phone number is on the outside of it. I have a friend that has a really cool truck that does some of this kind of thing in LA. No marketing, just all the stuff on the side. And he opens it up and it just looks so cool. People take pictures of it and hire him all the time. That's his entire branding is just, I've got a really cool truck, and you can tell that it's cool because he spent time branding it really well. And then people hire him.
Nice. Mitchell?
Yeah, regarding the power, Greg, we were talking last night on After Hours that your Jackery would do in a pinch for just about anything. And somebody else had one on, I forget who it was, and the Jackery is not going to make a bit of noise at all, and it just runs like crazy.
And you can get some, the Jackeries, I don't think it get big enough for it, but you can get some industrial size ones that are really something.
Go ahead, David.
Yep. The last must-have that I'd say would be one of those Starlink jobs or some sort of mobile internet, is definitely a need. But to Alex's point, though, with a unique-looking truck, my friend's got this food truck he's developing, and he's going the opposite way as far as branding because he wants to be able to brand it for an event or brand it for a client. So it's painted flat black right now. We just hit it with chalk for wherever we're going, and it's pretty cool. I'll share something in after hours.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw when I was doing my 80/20 research, one of the cool applications I saw for it was this custom cabinetry that was used inside of like a van space. So they made the exact dimensions. Nice thing with 80/20, making exactly the way that you want to. I was going to play a little bit of that. Yeah, just showing different cabinets of just being able to fill the space with the 80/20 is a really good application of that. So maybe something to take a look at. Let's go to our next question.
All right. Our next question comes from John Snyder, Reno, Nevada, and here on the panel. And he's asking, are there any updates on Education Saturdays?
John?
Sure. I'm excited to share that Dave Troutman and I have decided to pick up that ball, and summer break will be ending shortly. Our plan currently is to start on Saturday, September 17th. So if you are an educator, if you know an educator, if you have ideas or suggestions or thoughts, my personal dream is to really make Saturdays the place that educators go to learn.
Fantastic.
Super excited.
We're definitely interested in supporting you. So we have a couple of weeks to think about it, different guests that we'd like to have on. I know, Alex, you'd mentioned that we would be doing some instructional things, and I know it's John's and Dave's thing now too. Something similar to what, I know you were doing some instructional things about Keynote.
Yeah, so John and Dave are going to take it where they want to go. I think what we had lightly described is presentation skills, video skills, generally using interactive tools and so on and so forth, and then kind of a wild card kind of thing. But those are rough things. But John and Dave they're gonna own it. So I'm really just ready to help.
Fantastic. So, yep, we can ping John for his for our suggestions, and it'll be on the schedule. So looking forward to it. All right, let's go to our next question.
Our next question comes from Blue Melnick in Morrills Inlet, South Carolina, and here on the panel. I have about 20 Mac Minis rack-mounted, all with 2 HDMI connections going HDMI SDI converters. He's looking for a rack-mounted solution to clean up the converters.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen, Blue, is if it's a mid-Atlantic type shelf, and it's almost like a cheese plate shelf, so it has a bunch of slots and holes, and a lot of those converters, they'll have countersunk screws on the side that you would think are holding the box together. You can actually pull those out and screw them up under the cheese plate and mount them vertically rather than horizontally. Shrinking down you can get more dents on a shelf in a rack, and that might help. Or that other the crazy Velcro stuff that I love. I can't remember the brand name of.
Nice. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact one that we've used in the past, but there are high density racks, and so depending on the size of your converter, they're basically a rack, and they have a bunch of little slots, and you can just tie them in. The screws that go on the side of you pull the screws out that go on the side of the converter, and you put ones in on the other side of that rack, and it'll tighten them right to the converters. And I think it'll fit about 10 of them along a 1U rack. And it just depends on the size of the converter. But I've seen some of them that are designed. Most of the ones we've used are the ones that are bigger. I think the one you have is probably like the mini converters. They're probably really small. But I think that there's a version for that. But it's like, I think it's 1U is about 10 of them. So you could probably get them into 2 racks. And once you're using the screws in them. It's a little scary, but for me. But anyway, you're using them to pull them, to attach them to it. And it works pretty well. Also, Yellow Brick has their own version of this. We use a lot of Yellow Bricks, and they have their own rack that comes with it. They're a lot more expensive, but we have used Yellow Bricks a lot, and then they have their own racks that come with it there.
Very good. All right, next question.
Okay, our next question comes from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada, and here on the panel. Is there an ATEM Mini Extreme stand that provides strain relief for cables?
Mitchell?
I'm not sure, but I did see something that Chris Fenwick was showing the other day. It's called at mixingtable.com. It's a guy in the Czech Republic that makes really nice custom stands. And the back of the stand seemed to be very well designed to help support the HDMI, so all the strain isn't on the end of the cable.
Alex?
With any piece of hardware, if you're going to do a lot of plugging and unplugging, I don't do it with mine right now because I don't unplug and plug very often, but if you're doing a lot of plugging and unplugging, really think about how you're going to get to a convenience panel. So what you want is something that's short and small, getting out to a back plane that is now you can just do whatever you're going to do to it. You really don't want, in general, there was a discussion about this, I think, the other day about how, SDI signal, some of the stuff can break off of Blackmagics. And I realized I don't have that happen very often because we plug everything into something else. And then the plugging and unplugging is never going on with the device itself. It's almost always going on, like when I send out racks, it's always going out to a convenience panel that if I break something there or someone steps on something, it's a $20 problem, not a $2,000 problem.
And I thought you might mention this, Alex, about the convenience panel. My thought on that too, this is ATEM Mini Extremes. This is HDMI, which are, particularly finicky on the ATEM. One of the reservations I have about plugging in extra adapters and things is that they can sometimes be a little finicky with the connection you have. So you are adding an extra connection.
We've never had a problem with it. Like we do a lot of HDMIs out. And I will say, these are just HDMI throughs. So it's just metal to metal. It's not a converter. It doesn't do anything. It's literally just moving. It's just a connector and a connector. So it's just a pass through. And we have never, I don't know, we've had a lot of them and they've never been a problem for us.
Great. And is there a particular brand that you reach for?
That's Kevin Hansen probably question. I don't order them. I just see them added to the thing. I go, oh, we need some throughs here. And then they appear.
Okay.
So they're magic.
Maybe they're high end.
I don't know. Yeah.
Transmission.
Yeah. I don't know where we order them. I'll try to find out.
Okay. And that's SDI and HDMI you use? We
use it for everything. So we have, like when we do our convenience panels on the back of our things, will have everything that we want to plug into it. USB, HDMI, Ethernet, SDI, XLR, like anything that we want. What we do is we buy the convenience panel is often bought with just knockouts. So they just have holes in them where we're going to put things into them. And then you put 4 of this and 8 of this and whatever it is. And you just fill the knockout. You can buy ones that are already built. So you can buy ones that it's much higher density. So if you have a bunch of SDIs that you want to do, you can run them. You can get 32 and like a 2U or something, or even a 1U. They're really high density on the back end. But if you don't mind the density and you have more room, you just get these get them with knockouts. And then you buy the component that you need for each one of those and then just screw them in. And the nice thing about that is when they're not pre-built and they're a little lower density, if something breaks, you just pull it out and put another one in. Like you don't have to, and if you decide you want to use it in a different way, you pull that out and change it for something else. So, the convenience panels with knockouts are pretty useful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. David?
Yeah. Even I use the extreme ISO on my desk, but I purchased 8 pigtails from Monoprice. They're like 6-inch HDMI pigtails just to have it so that I can reconfigure things without hitting the hardware itself. I'm thinking of mounting that maybe to a piece of pegboard or something. That way it's a little more solid, but that works for me.
Nice. Courtney?
Yeah, one thing to watch out for is I helped somebody out on a remote one day that had an ATEM Mini, and they had sent it from somebody here in office hours, had built a great little case in a Pelican case that had the ATEM Mini with a convenience panel on the back and a built-in monitor on it. You just opened it up and had the power supplies underneath and everything, which was very cool. But they had these very thin HDMI cables that were the jumper cables that went from the back of the ATEM Mini to the convenience panel. And I could not get the ATEM Mini to recognize any camera or any laptop that I plugged into it. It wouldn't complete the handshake. It just didn't see it. The computer didn't see the ATEM Mini, so the computer couldn't configure its output to match the Mini over the EDID. So I think those little skinny cables that they were using in there as HDMI jumpers, like David was describing, didn't have all the wires in them for communication both directions. And so you can run into that problem. And since there wasn't room to plug a regular HDMI cable and the thing was bolted into the case, we were stuck. So make sure if you're going to buy little jumper cables, make sure that they're HDMI 2.0 compliant and that they have all the internal conductors in them, because they can save some money by eliminating a couple of wires in there, which can play havoc with the recognition.
Everyone's after copper these days. Huh? Well, John, maybe you can check and see what particular items, SKU numbers, other people that have been successful have used.
Yeah, the reason I asked was I was reconfiguring my desk, and I leave my ATEM flat, and I was thinking about getting a stand, and it lifts the back end of the stand up, and you're just putting levers into the back of a Mini, and any weight would leverage down onto that. So I was just curious what other people have done to solve that particular problem.
I will say for that, so if you having it flat, the ATEM, you have the HDMI sticking straight out the back. If you just barely tilt up on the ATEM, it just angles them down. If you have a back plane, you can just strap the cables down to. It provides a natural strain relief, and it allows the heat to come out the bottom. I had a little aluminum plate I was using to help it breathe, as well as angle it down to have some strain relief. It was convenient for the particular setup I had because I had a touch monitor, and it allowed the cables to go down onto the desk, have that strain relief, and then just route behind the monitor for the particular setup I had. But we have a couple of other ideas. Courtney, do you have another thought?
Yeah, one thing I do on mine is as the HDMI cables come out of the back, I put a bend in the cable and make a right turn, so that the far right one makes a left turn, and the next one makes a left turn, and the next one makes a left turn. So they all come out and turn left, and then I lash all those cables together so that the weight of all the cables is distributed across all the connectors. And I think and it keeps them from moving around because you don't have any one cable when you're fishing around back there. You're not putting a lot of force on one cable. It distributes any force across all the cable in it. By putting a tie wrap around all of them together as they make a left turn, it prevents movement from getting back into the connectors.
Yeah, one dilemma that I have is that if you only have one ATEM, you don't have a field and a studio one, then that is your working ATEM. So whenever you take it for mobile, you will have to unplug those things and plug them back into maybe another convenience port in your mobile setup. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, what Courtney said, the idea of putting the cable at an angle and taking that relief. I had a very well-made PK1 Extreme, which I had my ATEM on. As you can see, it wanted to be on an angle, and the wire or the cables dangling down put a lot of stress on them. I went back to being flat on the table, but I was thinking maybe a right angle or an up-down angle cable might allow you to take that strain and distribute it somewhere else, just like Courtney was suggesting.
Yeah, not a bad suggestion. So, John, I hope we've given you some thought on that. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. If Department Y mistakenly set up a registration on their regular Zoom account, but they should have used Department Z's larger webinar account, how easy is it to move registered guests from wrong Y to correct Z?
Go ahead, Blue.
It's not really hard. I'm pretty sure you can export a list of registrations via CSV from, Room Y or Department Y, and then create a new webinar under Department Z's account, and then import your pre-existing, and then redistribute a new registration link to people who have not yet registered. The other way that you could potentially do it, if Department Z doesn't necessarily need their high density or high capacity webinar license during the period of time that you're actually running your webinar, you could reallocate that Zoom license, that webinar license, to Department Y without having to go through all those machinations and have to redistribute a new registration link. So I think those are your two options.
Thanks, Blue. Go ahead, David.
Yep. To Blue's second point, that's option X. That's a back-end administrative thing, and we used to do that all the time. Just hot swap the license onto the account that needs it for the time, and you're good to go.
Very good.
And you only have to do that while the meeting is running. Like, you don't have to do that in advance, right? I'm not correct. Yeah.
Yeah, something like we've done in like 5 minutes before the thing kicks off. It just takes a second for it to trickle through the Zoom system and be applied to the account in question.
All right, very good. Let's go to our next question.
All right. And our next question from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois is, what is the smallest footprint computer for the Insta360 Link to work? I'm trying to put a camera on stage routed back to an ATEM in the booth.
I think we might have skipped one there.
Are
you seeing, is your display hiding that one?
It did. Yeah, it rolled through. Sorry. We'll get to that one, Kyle. My bad.
Spoilers.
First, it's been a while since I've been here. Sorry. A little rusty. Jason Robert Shaw is back from Sarasota, Florida. And can the new Insta360 Link webcam be used with Zoom on an iPad? For that matter, can any external secondary camera be wired for use with an iPad?
The iPad secondary camera question. Go ahead, Alex.
Technically, we believe that it can with iOS 16. We haven't seen anybody actually do it yet. So the new operating system should allow it to be able to see video coming through the USB-C. So it wouldn't be with any iPad, it'd be an iPad Pro. But we haven't seen anybody actually execute that yet, but we're hoping to see it in the fall.
So something to keep in mind, if we are able to pull it off, mobile devices and iPads will be limited to 720p input. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, now we're getting to the question from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. What is the smallest footprint computer for the Insta360 Link to work? I'm trying to put a camera on stage and route it to the back of an ATEM in the booth.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I would think one of those Melee computers that Courtney is probably gesturing to right now as we speak. That's small. It runs Windows. And probably would do the trick. That's the smallest I've seen, just in general.
David?
Oh, sorry, I had the mic open too. I'm really rusty today. The Intel Compute Stick thing, built-in HDMI, plug it right in, should do the job. I use this thing for a lot of stuff, for Playout B, for clocks. I've used it as a Zoom signage device. Pretty puny too.
And we've had people ask about plugging cameras such as the 360 directly into the ATEM. One of the advantages of using the solutions that David and Courtney is about to tell you is that you've got the options of actually controlling it and using it and passing that signal on through a computer, which oftentimes costs as much as any type of a UVC conversion would do. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, this is a Melee. There's a company called Quantum Access. This is a fanless PC. It has HDMI out. It has a nice separate antenna for Bluetooth, and it has, unlike the stick PCs, it has a Ethernet connection on it, plus dual band Wi-Fi, and it has two USB 3 connectors, so you can plug them in, Type A connectors, so you can easily plug them in right there, and it runs a full copy of Windows 10 Pro or Windows 11. So you can use that and run the HDMI into your ATEM.
And Courtney, do you mind leaving a link for that?
I will leave a link, Melee Pro. I'll have to look up the model number, but I'll put it in the event chat.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty. Our next question comes from Tony Mobley here on the panel and from Noonan, Georgia. And he noticed that Courtney is wearing an eagle eye cap today. Did he work on the film?
Well, Courtney has raised his hand, so we're going to have to speculate. Go ahead, Courtney.
I worked on promotional material for the film, not on the film itself, but for Warner Brothers. Yep.
We're still promoting.
I'd like to point out that Tony Mobley has the eagle eye for noticing that cap to begin
with. Fantastic. Next question.
Is from Eric Price in Kansas City. Was supposed to be interviewed this week on Discord, but my normal Zoom setup, the Rode-Motu-M1 Mini, was completely overdriving the audio, and no hardware software fix would stop the clipping. Switched to a USB mic, and it needed only minor tweaks. Any ideas why?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the Discord's audio and video capabilities are limited. So it is a very, very limited system, and it is really designed around vanilla plug your USB in, make it work. A lot of USB mics tend to be much lower in gain than something coming through. So it's probably like, for instance, I finally got this is the T-Bone, but it's in the USB. And I can test it now if we want, hold on. But you'll find that this, I think, is going to be a lot lower than what I have here. So let me see if I can pop this in. Okay, so now can you hear me? And does it sound as loud as the one before? Oh, it sounds okay. Okay, well, there you go. So this is the T-Bone. Never mind. I guess I completely ruined everything in my assumption that this would be lower. When I tested it earlier, I was like, oh, this isn't going to work, but it's working okay. There you go. So this is the T-Bone with the USB, but a lot of them won't work that as well, and they'll come in a little lower. And so a lot of these will gain up a lot more. The ones that are designed for vanilla, and so probably just saw it and was saying, oh, I need it. So I'm going to switch back now. How was that mic? How did it sound? Yeah?
Didn't sound like you changed mics.
Oh, it didn't? Oh, wait, hold on. How did it not sound like I changed mics? It didn't change mics.
Scratch the surface.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Oh, it's not
Here,
that
tap.
mic. It is that mic? Not that mic.
That's
So I didn't change mics.
It's your stellar.
Really
I wonder why it sounded so good.
It's amazing how good that mic sounds.
Hold on. I know why. It's a user error. Hold on. I changed the headset. The headset changed, but it doesn't change because I hear it in a different way. I hear myself. Let's try this. Now I've changed the mic. And
Now it's much lower, yes.
And now it's much lower, right? so there we go. That's why Discord doesn't do that. Is because these mics oftentimes don't have as much gain, and so it's really low. I have to get really close. Is that that's why Discord was
really low.
Just in case you're wondering.
Fantastic. Yeah, and Eric, I wonder too. You said Discord, but that could be the mobile app. It could be the Electron app on Mac or Windows. I think the Electron is basically a packaged up web app. I could be mistaken by that, but yeah, those interfaces, particularly to do with audio, may be a little tricky when using that. Some specifics might be interested too. I'm assuming you're using the desktop app on that. But let's go to our next question. I think you're muted there, David.
So I'm sorry. Our next question comes from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. I'm playing around using classroomscreen.com as a standby countdown screen before live events. Has anyone else tried this? And he has a link in the question.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Jason put this into the education channel in Discord, and he has a really good example in there in the tips and tricks screen. But you can it's a web-based tool where you can put little modules up and arrange them. You can have things like text or timers, and it's really, really reasonably priced. It's $30 a year to have something that you can do a quick layout with maybe a QR code so someone could access Mukana. Sorry about my dog. So it's worth checking out and probably something we'll talk about on a Saturday.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Alex.
There are a lot of solutions for this. so this is one that could possibly work. It looks like if all you're doing is, if you want to use all the other tools, the classroom management tool, this looks like a great second hour for us to like bring these guys on and take a look at it. So if you're looking all the tools and one of them happens to be Countdown, I think it makes sense. But if you're not, there's lots of free solutions. Guy Cochran has shown one that a friend of his built, and I can't remember the name of it. But there's also Counting Down 2. I think that H2R Graphics Here to Record has one. I think John Barker built. So there's a lot of different countdown tools that are available. Of course, you can make your own movie in motion or something like that as well. That's what I do, so that I can make them all customized. But if you just need something to pop up, there is a lot of web tools that are out there that will produce a countdown clock that you can define.
That is true. We also use the some web-based ones as well. But yeah, if you need those features, it's worth taking a look at. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. What are some options to mirror your iPhone screen to share on a PC and Mac?
Go ahead, Dave.
Yep. I actually use NDI screen recorder on the iPhone. And then I have a Magewell NDI to HDMI adapter on the switcher, and I can toggle it in. Oh, wait, wrong one. No, it's this guy. There we go. That's the phone on a ATEM. You could probably get it into the ATEM with a Apple TV, etc. But NDI is my friend, and I enjoy playing with it.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Blue.
I feel like the latest version of Mac OS actually has this built in, so you can now, I think you can now AirPlay your phone just to a Mac, but it only goes full screen. An app we've used for a long time is by a company called, I think it's AirParrot, called Reflector, which also works really nicely, and it also works with Android devices, not just iOS devices.
Mitchell.
To add what David was saying, you can do it with your Apple TV very easily. Hold on a second. Let me punch a couple of buttons here. You go down to a program like Sienna, and then you select your particular iPhone. In that case, that's it. And there we are. We are live via your ATEM. Now, that's not going to a PC
and can you see
or
your
my Mac.
screen as well, other than the camera? If you just go to your screen, will we see your screen on your phone? Like if you want to show a game or...
Very good point.
For that,
no.
There's a separate NDI product called NDI Screen Recorder from iOS that'll do the screen record or the camera, as Mitch was showing. So, yeah.
Nice.
Well, probably. I just don't know enough buttons to hit.
Well, I think actually the screen share isn't that the easy lift for the Apple TV. I specifically purchased a Gen 4.
Well, this is all the hard stuff is the PC. like if you have an iPhone, you can share to any Apple device without any. Mm-hmm. There's no effort there. It's the PC that you have to figure out something wonky to get to.
Right.
But the Macs, all the Apple devices talk to each other. So.
No, I'm using a PC for my Zoom participation. NDI is that good middle ground. Mitch, before the Sienna product came out for Apple TV, I purchased the Magewell NDI to HDMI converter, and it functions the same way, where you can select whatever NDI source you want, and it's on my switcher. So.
And just the Reflector product is Mac and PC as well.
That's great.
Nice. We didn't say anything about the hardware, but if you have an ATEM or something going into it anyway, you can plug that into a Mac or PC, and then the Apple product you need is just any Apple TV. We'll pipe that in for that. If you want the app specifically for what Mitchell's using, you have to get an Apple TV that will accept apps. And the first one that does that is fourth generation. So third generation is fine for just, screen sharing. But if you want the specific app that does the camera show, which is clean. So you could share the app that is your camera, but then you'll have it won't be a clean output. But if you want the camera specifically, then that. But yeah, I think the question is specifically about screen sharing. That's less of a lift than if you want like a clean camera in feed. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. Are there any suggestions on where to get vintage electronics repaired in the Los Angeles area?
Mitchell?
Robert, I got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is there is a person that is sort of like the Joe Walsh of equipment repair in LA, and he does all vintage stuff. In fact, he repaired a vintage TC Electronics finalizer that I have. The bad news is I don't have his address or email just yet, but I will look it up and I'll place it in the event chat as soon as I pick it up. It is a crazy Joe Walsh sounding kind of guy. It's obviously a rock and roller, but he's great at replacing caps.
You don't know his name? You just can't remember his name?
I can't remember his name. George Meyer? Company. That sounds really familiar.
You might be George Meyer.
Might be him. Does he look Courtney? Like Joe Walsh?
I think he does. I've only met him in passing. He was at some show so that's someone I know that does it, but I don't know how good they are. They were known. That's all. So
nice. Courtney, did you have any? You're in the area.
I guess it depends on what type of electronics you're talking about. There's a company called Stone Electronics on Beverly. Look for them in LA. That does vintage electronic repair. So you might give them a call. Stone Electronics.
Nice. It is becoming more and more difficult. Repairs in general, and as these hardware gets sunset, difficult to find people with those esoteric skills locally. And if not locally, you may want to look at shipping it to a reputable place. Courtney,
90% of the time, it's caps that need to be recapped or a power supply that's gone south.
Gotcha.
I was going to say, if it's recording equipment, check with Coast Recording on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood. If they're still there, I think they are still there. If they made it through the COVID times, because they have a whole lot of vintage equipment, so they must have somebody there to do repairs.
John?
Don't let your smoke out of your electronics. I went to school for 4 years to figure out how to put smoke into those electronics.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that service bulletin. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, our next question comes from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. With the caveat that each production may differ, what's the nomenclature for typical positions, such as TD, A1, etc., and their normal responsibilities?
Go ahead, Alex.
It's complicated because broadcast and events have different names for things. So like technical director in a broadcast is a person hitting the keys. A technical director in an event oftentimes is a person managing an enormous amount of the power and everything else. And so, but we'll just say for now, oftentimes a TD is considered a technical director, or a vision mixer in Europe would be someone who is actually punching the keys on a switcher, whereas the director is someone who's calling the shots. And they are, but of course, again, if you hire a director in Los Angeles, they are going to expect to design your entire show, with all the lights and everything else. When we get the broadcast, they're like, well, that's just the person calling the shots. They're not designing the show. A1s are your A1 is your audio, your first audio, your most senior audio person. And so that'll be your A1. A2s are usually their assistants, and they're managing something. Oftentimes they'll be managing something specific like comms or mics or other things like that. You'll have your EIC, that's engineer in charge. So that's going to be the person who's kind of knows where all the bodies are, electronic bodies, and knows how to put them all together and make sure that everything's working. You have PAs, but that's pretty general. Production assistants are folks that are the grease of the show. Like they just make everything go. And then you may have talent. You call it talent, whatever you want. Talent, talent wrangler, talent specialist, talent interface, talent. Those type of things. You have HMU, that's hair and makeup. Hair and makeup is HMU. I'm sure that I'll let Courtney run with where I've left it off. I'm sure there's lots more.
Yeah, in the film industry, there's some funny ones. Best boy, which can be either grip or electric, which is usually the second person in charge. The gaffer is in charge of lighting and electric, and the key grip is in charge of the grip department. And his best boy would be his first assistant, second man in the pecking order for the grip department. So you have those funny names. Alex covered most of the others. For sound in television and film, we don't use the A, normally don't use the, in production, not live production, we don't use the A series. We use production sound mixer, boom man, cable person, or boom person these days to be gender respectful. We've gotten away from the man, and best boy could be a best girl these days. You never know.
Right. And it's different in weddings. I know that there's colloquialisms in every industry, whether you're whatever trade person you are. Different areas tend to have the same or different names for different functions. And I wonder, with our global community where people tend to be more networked, if some of these things tend to, you have people from different areas, and virtually you can be in different areas, so you're going to be tripping over some of the colloquial names for things. I know, for example, a showrunner could be someone that's involved in most of the creative process of the show, or could be someone that runs out to grab the coffee, just depending on what your colloquialisms are. David?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to learn what some of the colloquialisms are outside of the U.S. And the one that we overlooked is the gopher. The gopher is the gopher for everything.
Yes. Well, and again, the one that I find the most there's lots of fun. We should have a second hour about nomenclature. I think that'd be really fun. We'll see if we can get some folks on from different parts of the world and talk about what they call things, because like the one that we had to get used to is Vision Mixer. And I think Vision Mixer makes way more sense than technical director. And so Vision Mixer is what a technical director is in like the UK. If you say, I need a Vision Mixer, that means that I'm cutting I need someone to cut the show. They're not expecting to call the show. They're expecting to cut it. Also, I think that in the UK, we noticed that in the United States, the screen that sits in front of the stage for you to look down at, for your notes and everything else, is a confidence monitor. We want you to have confidence of where you are. In the UK, it's a comfort monitor. I like comfort monitors so much better. Do we have any comfort monitors? It's so great.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you import one, then you have to change the name.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, they have a lot of great names in the UK that just make sense. I've been called a DJ all my life, and I always felt it was kind of a derogatory term. Over there, they're called presenters. I like that.
Yes.
Nice. So yes, I've been typing in my secretary nomenclature for equipment, personnel, and their various tasks, duties, and disparities.
And it'd be good if we figure out a way to get people from around the world to do it, because that would be a fun one. Take this question, do exactly what we just did now, but then expand it to the rest of the world. That'd be really fun.
Right. Yeah. Maybe even sort of a dive into, what those responsibilities are, if they're just a different name for the same project, or for whether it actually characterizes, different skill sets. Yeah. Pretty interesting. All right. And let's go to our next question.
All righty. Our next question comes to us from Hasma Gajar in Cape Town, South Africa. In my limited office space, my 24-inch PrompterPeople rests on a fluid head tripod, usurping more space. Desk mount is an option, but the cost is $190 and the shipping is $500. Any floor-mounted options besides a tripod? Ceiling is not concrete.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've used with the teleprompters is we take a C-stand and we get rid of the legs and we get a flat plate. It's about a 18-inch plate that's about an inch thick, so it's really heavy. Put felt on the bottom, otherwise it scratches everything. And then we take the C-stand and we weld it to the flat plate. Now, this is not something that is easy to move around, but it takes almost no space. So it'll come right up behind, and you can even if you're going to put the weight forward, you can even put that bar. If you need to put it against a wall, you don't want to go all the way to the back, but you can weld it further back from the center, especially if it's going to pull weight forward, and it'll pull against itself or pull against there. And that's another way to mount that teleprompter without taking up very much space. And it's not very expensive. You can technically do it with pipes. You don't need a C-stand, but the C-stands are usually not that expensive. And it just gives you a nice thing to attach everything to.
Thanks, Alex. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Hasmuk, I like Alex's solution because it makes sense. And if you don't have a lot of space in front of your desk, a tripod's not going to work because it's going to take up at least 2 or 3 feet in order to get the proper spread on the legs. I went through this when I was looking at putting a 24-inch teleprompter on my desk, which I didn't end up doing, but I spoke with the people at PrompterPeople, and I was very interested in their desk mount, which is an articulated arm that would allow you to place that monitor wherever you want it. Here's the problem. At 24 inches, that's right on the edge of being too heavy. And if you put the wrong camera inside, you're probably going to have problems with that drifting up and down because the weight is just a little too much. The only other option I would consider is a basket or a bowl that you can mount on the desk. You see these a lot when people are checking out TV cameras, is that they throw their fluid head into the bowl. It's just like a construct with legs that sit out, and it maybe takes up about 1 foot on your desktop. And then you drop your fluid head into it and then screw it down on the front, and that provides the likeness of a tripod without the legs.
Good, Courtney.
Well, I was trying to find a picture of a baby plate, but I ended up with a bunch of little plastic plates designed for babies. But There's a thing in the grip technology known as a baby plate, which is a steel plate with a 5/8" spud on it, and you can get them with a little riser on it. And then you go to True Audio and buy one of my patented Good Sound mic adapters, which has a 3/8" spud on one end and a 3/8" post on one end that screws into the bottom of your teleprompter plate, and then a 5/8" hole that you can secure it to the top of one of those posts that you have on top of your baby plate. So that gives you a nice secure mount for the teleprompter with that adapter that goes on there.
Yeah, and my setup here is a teleprompter that is desk mounted, and I use the similar methodology that was expressed by our panelists. So the camera itself it's custom. So the camera itself is adapted to the plate that you would attach to a tripod, but without the tripod legs. And it has a super clamp that holds it onto a plate that holds the camera in the correct position. And the teleprompter itself is mounted separately. So the camera doesn't really need a lot of strength just to hold the camera mount. But if it's on a if you need to hold the whole rig combined, then that would be a lot more substantial. You want to get a decent setup. But I have the teleprompter set separately, so the camera can be adjusted and moved in the back. In other words, that works more for a custom setup than something you'd be opening and setting. So I can show you some examples, Hasmukh, if you're interested. Hit me up on Discord. All right, let's go to our next question.
Alrighty, and Hasmukh is back with another question. Using the Blackmagic 6K as a webcam, all the settings are on camera and not in the ATEM, white balance, iris, shutter, etc., all on camera. Each time I launch ATEM software, the ATEM overrides the 6K settings. Even restoring a saved ATEM setting does not help. Ideas?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I don't have personal experience, but we were talking about this very issue before we went on the air today. And the solution is, well, other than we can confirm that a lot of times when you start up your camera, it doesn't save the settings when connected to the ATEM. But the solution is to go into the camera remote, just jiggle one of the settings, and everything will pop right back in. That's what I was told.
Go ahead, Alex.
Get a LUT that you like build a LUT that you like, put it on the camera, and it'll always stay the same.
Very practical, very concise. And I was hoping to chew on that for a little bit, but we'll have to go to the next question.
Well, all I was going to say is that we've kind of moved to color correcting all of our cameras with LUTs, and the reason we do that is because we can. And this is like you color correct it with the same lens, for exactly what you want to do, and if you do it. What we found was that resolve is so much more precise than painting the cameras with the ATEM switcher or any kind of RCP. So anything that you want to paint a camera with, you're going to get more control in resolve than you are going to get from a paint system. And so what we really learned was that, hey, it'd be better just to get good at this. And so we've been getting better and better at just using the LUTs. And so basically we go in and we can match all these cameras up, get them to look exactly the way we want. Now, with no correction, with no changes, they look exactly the way you want them to look. If you need to make small adjustments, you can make those small adjustments as needed, but they're all going to look pretty good coming right out of the gate. It's just that the video color space may not be exactly what you want, but you can get a LUT, especially if you're going to use the same thing every day. You can get a LUT to do it.
Yeah, it makes total sense, Alex, especially if you were wanting to repeat something over and over again, mm-hmm. whereas, taking the ATEM and changing it, obviously you won't have to save the settings. And what
we're finding is the advantage of doing the LUTs is also if you get anything that has a LUT in it, you can use this pattern, this process to tie any camera to another camera. So you can color correct one camera to another camera by simply having, putting a LUT somewhere in the middle of it. Either that camera takes a LUT, or you can put a LUT box somewhere in the middle where it'll go through it and apply that LUT. And it allows you to, match all the cameras much more precisely.
Yeah, fantastic. And those are the areas, Alex, you went into a little bit about where to put those those LUTs at? The converters?
Yeah, there's a couple of
Place-
converters that Blackmagic makes. A lot of cameras now take LUTs. I wouldn't do production without a camera that took a LUT at this point. And so if you can't apply it at the camera, I don't really consider that a viable live camera in my opinion. But if you can't for whatever reason, you have to run it through a box. And that can be a HDMI to SDI. I mean, there's what we wish Blackmagic made was just a LUT box. Like here's a HDMI to HDMI that I will apply a LUT, and or there's a SDI to SDI and I apply a LUT in the middle. But usually you have to use one of their converters. I think that like their 6G HDMI to SDI has a LUT that you can load into it. And there's a couple of their micro converters I think that have them, but it's not. It's all in the conversion rather than I just need to have it do the thing. And so that's sometimes we end up having to convert to and from, HDMI to SDI and then SDI to HDMI so that we can put the LUT in the middle. And so I haven't seen a box that just does a LUT, which would be nice.
Could Alex, you use is it the bidirectional one that has, if you were just going HDMI, you just wanted to put the LUT in place?
I know that when we did it, we weren't using another camera because we weren't trying to put it in. And so the bidirectional wasn't necessary because we can do it to any Blackmagic camera. Well, almost any Blackmagic camera. And so it was an SDI to HDMI and then HDMI to SDI or something like that from a Sony F55, which is what we were trying to tie in at the time. So
gotcha.
It wasn't
Courtney?
an F55 because the F55 could take a LUT. It was like an FS5 or FS something or other.
Oh, copy. Yep. Go ahead, Courtney.
I haven't used it because I don't live in that world, but they do make a Blackmagic camera control that works with an iPad. Maybe that could be used. I don't know if it'll work with that particular 6K or not, but since they have an open API and they use a lot of common controls, you might look at that on the App Store to see if you get an iOS app that can wirelessly control it. So you could put the iPad or an iPhone and run the app on the iPhone and just control it remotely from that.
Interesting. Okay, let's check that out. Let's go to our next question.
Our next question comes in to us from Andy Carluccio in San Francisco, California. Insta360 supports an OSC HTTP API already for its cameras, but not yet for the Link. Can those with links submit tickets to them to add support for it in these APIs?
I think I can answer that question, but I'll let our panelists take first crack at it. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, that sounds like the office hour call to arms. I reflect back on when we did this to, I think it was Universe, and the results were fast and lasting.
That would be fantastic. Go ahead, Alex.
I think, do we want to use give feedback? Is that I think that's the one we want. Let's see here. Relevant pictures. I'm trying to find the one that takes, this is the...
Chad posted something in the...
There's a link there. And then I think that if let me give you even a more direct link, I think is the Insta360. It's not Insta360. I just want to make sure that we're asking for, like precisely Insta360 feedback. Yeah, because we want to make sure we go through the same pipeline. So if you do that one and you can check off is the link in there? Oh, their feedback isn't in. Oh, hold on. Yeah, we have to find a place. Right now, their feedback page doesn't. The feedback page doesn't have the link, so you have to do other and say link.
Chad has one listed on the panel chat.
I used the one that Chad did, but there's a bunch of options: online chat, phone, community forum, email, Facebook, feedback. I think I would use feedback to do that, to fill out that form. But you'll have to put in other and then do, unless there's another one that I don't see. But Chad's went to...
That's what I'm seeing here. So when you click on the link for it right now, it takes you to, I've got too many links. It takes you to, seems like it's still a work in progress there. So maybe some clarification about where.
Yeah, we just want to be very, very specific about where people should go so people don't effort it.
Let's do a little research on that, and then we'll send out an email, everybody. And see if we can't rush the gate there. I do think that we need to push some pressure down.
That would be fantastic to have that kind of control. Already, the Insta360 Link is fastly becoming our head of the pack as far as options, quality. So yeah, it'd be really fantastic to get that. Hopefully get the correct link, and we'll give it the required attention. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty, our next question comes to us from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. I'm looking for Bluetooth receivers to attach to audio mixers to install in university press boxes for music playback from phones by coaches. Differences in quality and recommendations.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, they're all limited by the quality of Bluetooth, which isn't necessarily the very best, but it will work. JK Audio makes a bunch of different devices that'll do that. My favorite, though, comes to us from a great named company, Angry Audio. And if you talk to Catfish over there, they have a specific device that works with your iPhone or Android phone that will get audio in and out. So if you want to play music, no problem. If you want to interview somebody, no problem. You can do all those things. And by the way, if you're playing music, make sure you have the proper licensing, because you could get troubled with the music police.
That's Angry. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I would agree with Mitch. The other thing I would caution against, though, is just giving the coaches the ability to stream music, and it's kind of outside of the production crew. If, for instance, any other audio comes up, if he's scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and some video comes up with audio hot, that's a potential thing that, much like Alex's thing about giving mics to participants in an audience, you don't give them the mic, you put the mic in their face.
Alex?
This might also be a good thing for a Sonos, mostly because the Sonos you could have it'll do anything on your network at that point. And so instead of being a Bluetooth connection, which will have a limited distance, the Sonos will, if they have the Sonos app and they're part of that, they can just play this out to the Sonos. And, the newer ones hopefully work better. The older ones all died in my house. I had 14 of them. And they all kind of went sideways. But for a while, I was able to decide, like, I could build groups of those Sonos outputs. And so I could say, I want to play only in the living room and in the bedroom, or the living room and the kitchen, or the outside in the yard, or by the pool. And I could just decide, I can build groups that would do any section of those that I wanted to. And so Sonos might be actually a good solution for that. I'm still a little salty about what happened to the hardware, but outside of that, it's good.
David, did you have another thought?
Hearing of the Sonos thing, it kind of led me down the wormhole of Rogue Amoeba's Airfoil, which is a similar thing. It allows you to group speaker bunches over AirPlay, etc. But that's not for the university press box. Logitech makes a simple little RCA adapter as well that could do it. Quality, though, like everybody's saying, it's not the greatest, but for press box, that's usually just BGM.
And Alex?
One thing that also popped into my head was that you could use a BSS 326. We use the BSS 806 for a lot of the comms and everything else that we do. These are London, I think London is what's called, I think it's owned by Harman Kardon. These are industrial level routers. And there is a huge ecosystem that goes with these routers. For this audio, it's basically a nodal way to kind of move audio back and forth and around. And what happens is you can buy like little volume things that you can put in the wall and turn the volume up and down for that specific feed or whatever is going on. But they also are activated by Dante. And so you could literally take one of the, I think we've showed it in the past, one of the Bluetooth to Dante adapters and just put them on the network. And now you can see it and you can control the routing. You could put limiters, all kinds of other stuff. The 806 will need that. I think the 326 only does routing, but the 806 will let you do processing. And you could go back to like making sure it never gets too loud. It does what it needs to do. You can build. So, I mean, it depends on your budget, but you could build something with an 806 or the 806 has processing. The 326, I believe, only has
routing, but the whole ecosystem, the BSS ecosystem or the London ecosystem is amazing.
They're very nice. I've done 2 installations with them. They're very expensive too.
You can build eBay, by the way. Do not, like an 806 is like $6,000 and eBay is like $2,000. And so this is, I don't buy a lot of eBay stuff, but I can't afford, I can't get over the $6,000 thing for the 806, but I can get to $2,000. I think we've got a couple of them in the office. And so but I would say that it if you really want it to work, the 806 and the 326, but the 806 gives you, I mean, like I worked in stages where they'll switch from 5.1 to 7.1.4 to something else by just pushing a button on an iPad, and the whole infrastructure changes. So you can build a lot of conditional routes that make all of that work. It's really kind of magical.
And John?
I was wondering, if you want multiple coaches to be able to use it, would that complicate anything? And how would you prevent someone in the audience from just sending a Bluetooth signal and taking over? Because that's what I would have done in college.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the gate control is for that. The pairing.
I don't think that this is for the. I'm going to guess that this is not for when there's audience there. I'm guessing that this is to play rock and roll music while they're practicing. I think that's why the coaches want control. They don't want to do it during the show. You have production people for that, but they want to play up, some kind of rocky music while you're running up and down stairs and doing all that stuff. We used to have a boombox for that, but it would be good to use the home system. So that's my guess is why the coaches want it. It's not so much that there's going to be an audience there doing something, although I would probably do the same thing that John did. If I knew that there was a Bluetooth available, I'd try to get close enough to it to take it over and play, I don't know, Bach.
There's your solution. All Bluetooth caveats apply.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty. Our next question comes from Mark Giuliani in Washington, D.C. And here on the panel, can we have a second hour on how to build a LUT for the Blackmagic Design Workflow?
Go ahead, John Preto.
You won't need a second hour, Mark. It takes about 5 minutes to do it. Super, super easy.
Alex?
Yeah, we did one. We have had Charles on, I think, talking about that in the past. You might be able to find it, but I think Charles talked a little bit about building a LUT in the past, but it is, but someone does need, I will say it's super easy, but someone needs to do a video about it. Maybe I'll try to do one in the next little bit of time. It's really like, it's a very simple process to build a LUT, but it is one of those things that you're bang your head on the screen for a while because there's no good video about it. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to do it. It's just, there's videos out there, but the problem with YouTube is 5-minute videos when they need to be 30 seconds. Like I need a minute of this is how you do this thing. And that's what I need is lots of little 1-minute videos, not 5-minute videos that start with 2 minutes of please subscribe to my channel.
Yeah. Yeah, we should reward those concise creators. And I've created them myself, but I wonder if maybe more the minutia around what you would want in the LUT.
Well, I think that what someone needs to build is a playlist. But the first video on the playlist is just here's how to do it. Like, you go into the color panel, you select the clip that you're on, you go to the color panel, you add your transform, you add your color transform, you go back to the first one, you add the curves that you want or the adjustments that you want, you select that and you say save a LUT into a 33-point LUT and then you send it out. But that's the steps of it, and someone needs to do a little video about it. So hopefully
But YouTube now has the viewer heat map. If you scroll over top of the progress bar, you see where the relevant data is. It's in that distribution curve. And
it's one of those things that as we start to hand things off, my goal is that we start adding lots of these little things that someone asked about. We add to the office hours channel of like, here's an explanation that came up in offer. We just say, here's something, blah, 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 blah. And we put it out there as these little tips and tricks to make it. If you're interested in that team, you can reach out to me. But it is, I want to make them good, and concise. I don't want to just start throwing videos up there. But I do think I'd love to have them be generally 1 minute or less, not like we spend a lot of energy on making something really dense and really, great, and then see if we can fit it into a minute,
It might be a nice thing to blast out on our daily emails.
We have to manage it first. So I need to know who wants to manage it first. Like that's like, and then the second thing is that, we need,
what I'm doing right now, and Josh is helping a lot with the second hour, and John Snyder is taking over. John and Dave are taking over the education, and we have new hosts. And as I get more time, I hope my goal is to focus more on doing more things. But first, I'm trying to hand everything else off. This week is a big week because we're going to hand off the Zoom and AWS and everything else. We're finally got all the pieces in place, I think.
So let us know if you'd like to participate. We accept suggestions, particularly if you're willing to
do something about
it. Do the work.
Exactly.
That gives a lot more weight to suggestions. Yes. David.
Yeah, just hearing that explanation reminded me of I think it was a Saturday Night Live skit from years back in the Aykroyd days. It was called Short Attention Span Theater. And it was like a play that was condensed to like 5 minutes and just right down to the meat and potatoes of it.
The best. That's the best way to watch. When I miss a football game, I love watching there's like a 20-minute version, I think, that goes up somewhere. I don't remember where it is. It's like great. It's just play.
Snap to snap.
Yeah, snap to snap. It's great.
Yep. Mitchell?
Yeah, Josh and I were talking about doing a short introductory video for guests that come on the show, and how to condense that into a very short program would make sense to have it there just to send out to say, here's what you expect being on office hours, and here's what you do.
Somewhere hidden in the back, I did those because we did so many Hangouts. We probably prepped over 3,000 people for Hangouts, and we had we had lots of things, like all the things we had to do to set up. I just made little movies. Okay, here's how you set up your G Plus account. Here's how you do this thing. And those were some of my most viewed videos at one time, because it was just because we would be sending people links like, hey, check this out before we come on and do those things, and it's worth doing.
Somehow I got it in my head that it'd be cool to go to cameo.com and get a Hollywood star to make some commentary as an example of
Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, Morgan, sure.
Yeah. Here's how it is.
Yeah, video is such a important and information dense medium to convey things. So pictographics, video, yeah, definitely.
I think if we could it would almost be worth the funding if we could just send large scripts to Morgan Freeman and have him do the thing. Here's how and do the whole, do all of our tutorials with Morgan Freeman. I don't know how much that would cost.
Used to set up his lot this way.
Yeah, it would be so awesome just to have, it could be Morgan Freeman explainers. Like, we pay him for it, but it's like a whole channel that everything is explained, but by Morgan Freeman. And we just
I'd rather have you do Bane. I think Bane would be great doing all the tapes.
All right, look into it.
At work, I've actually used Keynote to make screensaver movies for Zoom rooms to show people how to use Zoom rooms when they're not using the Zoom room. So like this, and it just keeps going back and forth, and learned all the magic move stuff right here in office hours. It works pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice. We could do worse. So someone just has to volunteer. Step up.
Keynote is a great way to do a lot of that. I mean, I made templates, or like I've shown a client, like, this is what we're going to do with your commercial, and they were like, okay, where do I write the check? This looks great. And I'm like, oh, this is the Keynote version. And then it was really hard to turn it into the actual version. I was like, I should have just left the Keynote version, because it was the same price. Like, they were ready to pay whatever it was. And I'd done the whole thing in Keynote with all these little animations, and reproducing those animations in Motion or After Effects was painful.
Your team is like, did Alex show another Keynote? We didn't get the call for this job this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's go to our next question.
Alrighty, our next question comes from Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, and here on the panel. A nephew has started college, has no video editing on his 2021 M1 MacBook Pro. Should we encourage him to learn Resolve or Final Cut?
John?
If your nephew is in a program where he's going to classes for video editing, there's probably a recommendation or requirement from the school, and I would encourage him to use that. There's probably additional discounts for that, or he's already paying for it, and the instructors will know it better so they can help him better. If it's just he wants to be able to do this for projects, he does have iMovie on his device, or maybe his cell phone would make it easier for him to do something for a project-based work.
Mark?
John said it all.
And Alex?
So I think it depends on whether people who want to work in the industry tend to learn Premiere or Avid. So if they're going, okay, I want to get a job in Hollywood, those are the two that they tend to learn. People who, when you talk to YouTubers and people building their own content, they tend to be heavily Final Cut because they don't get paid by the hour. They get paid to get it done. I mean, they just need to produce the content. And Final Cut is, I would say 3 to 5 times faster than Premiere or Avid to cut. It's just the way it organizes everything. It's just way faster to cut through things very fast. For high-end solutions, I still use Resolve. If I have to do a lot of fine color, fine channel work, so on and so forth, I have to go into Resolve. So I have to admit that I haven't, and I'm just saying that's what I see a lot of people going towards. Again, when we talk to social media folks, they're all on, either the native app like TikTok or something like that. They're on iMovie or Final Cut. There's a handful of them that are doing something else, but almost all of them are going that direction. And then that we've dealt with anyway, because they don't get paid by the hour. They just have to get it done. And they're not trying to do heavy final, color correction and, everything else that's there. So those are the things that we see a lot of there. So it just depends on what your nephew wants to do. If they just want to create stuff, I find iMovie to be a little frustrating. And I don't learn iMovie or GarageBand because I find them to be fairly limiting. And now I've learned a bunch of skills that I can't go use somewhere else. So like I even do my podcast editing on Logic. Why? Because I just want to keep on doing reps. So I every time I do something, I'm doing more and more of it in there. Even though I'm not making music, I want to be comfortable in an app that has nearly infinite scale. Rather than something that I'm going to eventually have to now relearn something new. So I think that would be it.
Yeah, I think a lot of young people that are getting into this industry right now have a huge head start to be really talented in these fields. Let's go to our final question of the show.
All righty. And our final question comes from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. What 360 cameras are good for capturing HDRIs? Alex.
Depends. So if you are looking for, I think the one that's easiest for real 360s is probably the Theta. So the Theta is, there are apps that you can get on your phone that will lock. The Theta has an open API. So people can build a lot of different things for it. And that has been a huge advantage to development for the Theta for shooting things like HDRIs. And so you'll find some iPhone apps and some Android apps that will control it and take the multiple exposures that you want to take for the HDRIs. And so this is, to back up for folks, what an HDRI is you typically are shooting 3, 6, 9, 12 photos at different exposures. So you have your middle exposure where you should have it, or where you would normally expose right in the middle, and then you're going brighter and darker. And what that allows you to do is when you compile all these together, you end up with something that there's 2 options. One is it's tone mapped. And so it means that you're pulling out the shadows and things in the highlights because it's tone mapped. It's compressing all of those exposures into a single linear exposure, or it has an enormous amount of data in it. And that what we can do is use that for lighting, 3D objects and so on and so forth, because we can really understand the trajectory of that lighting. And so, I've used the Thetas pretty successfully. For really high end ones, we use 180 degree, like fisheye lenses, and we put them on, big SLRs. The big thing there is that you have to suspend the camera over a nodal point, the nodal point of the lens. So the nodal point is where you can rotate the lens and there'll be no parallax because it's right in the the nodal point. So you can take these fisheyes, put them on a full frame sensor, and you'll take a series of exposures. So for instance, with my Canon cameras, that was with a Pro Mode. In the Pro Mode, I had it set, and so it'll just take 6 exposures or take 9 exposures, and then you rotate it and do it again and do it again and do it again. The problem you have there is if you're doing it where there's a lot of motion, a lot of things are moving while you're doing it, and it does take a couple minutes for each one. And if you're in the middle of a line area, you have to have someone behind you to make sure no one sneaks up on you. So anyway, I have pictures of that. I found that the Theta did most of what I needed to do very, very effectively for what I needed out of the HDRIs. And so look at the higher end Thetas now, that I think they're incredibly high resolution, for what we're used to. But I think you probably find that pretty successful and really small.
Thank you, Alex. So that's it. That's the last question of our show. Thank you for everyone who's asked questions. We hope that we've given you some concise questions. The nice thing about our community is that even if the limitations of our panel didn't give you all the information, then that question's out there now in our community. Will oftentimes tap you on the shoulder and give you even more concise answers. So it's great to be able to put the questions into the show, and you'll get really the wisdom of the community. We encourage everyone to join our community. You can be a part of this wonderful production. We want to thank everyone who's had a part in producing our show today. But if you'd like to join, as we said, go to officehours.global, sign up. If you get the regular emails, there's a link in there to where you can help in producing the content. So we thank all of our volunteers, our producers, our panelists, and until our next show, we'll be in after hours.
I think we should do all the training whispering. Hey, here's how to create a LUT. We'll just be like, here's how to, yeah, like the first thing you want to do is you want to go into the color panel. Now that you're in the color panel, it'll be like ASMR, and every once in a while you hear this. So here's, it's just for you, Mitchell. Oh, David, is that from a Theta?
Yeah, that's from a Theta SC2 at the rocket launch.
Thetas are really cool. They're great because you can just put them in your pocket and pull them out when you need them.
What a way to spend Saturday. Bye, y'all.
There's a hum in my radio.